I'm happy to be here tonight to share a story of sustainability that is grounded in the land and sea of Haida Gwaii, of these shining islands that are located north of Vancouver Island and south of Alaska. These islands are my homeland, and they are the focus of my law practice since 1995. This is an image taken from the space shuttle of Haida Gwaii. I showed this image of my hometown of Skidegate as it would have appeared in 1878 to the Supreme Court of Canada in the Haida Nation case. It shows the incredible use of old-growth forests and the cedar tree to Haida culture. But we can't tell the story about the Haida's journey towards sustainability without also alluding to Canada's history with Indigenous peoples. My father endured residential schools at a school like this. My great-grandmother is in the bottom photo, and she endured the potlatch prohibition. So with the last regalia that they had left, they were allowed to wear it in this photo taken by a missionary in 1890. This history impacted our territory. These images show the Crown's allocation of 100% of our territory. 0% of the land base is allocated for actual ownership by Haida peoples. The reserves, of course, are owned by the Canadian government. And this history, of course, led to cultural emergencies like this one. This is a clear cut on Haida Gwaii, typical of the 1980s. In the photo is Kucha, the past president of the Haida Nation, who brought the Haida Nation case to the Supreme Court of Canada. Again, these are of the ancient sisters that had appeared in the first photo. Now, my work builds on the prior work of many, many others going back 150 years, including these elders whose work led to the establishment of the Guayhanas area and led to joint management of 25% of the territory with the Haida Nation and the Government of Canada. Even though it was 25%, it then left 75% of the land base unprotected. Eventually, we ended up before the Supreme Court of Canada in 2004, and then celebrated that victory with the Taco River Tlingit in the streets of Vancouver. Unfortunately, BC replaced that TFL that we actually challenged and brought to the Supreme Court of Canada after our win. So after more blockades and more negotiations, in 2010, we implemented our vision of what the land will look like. 75% of our land base is protected under Haida, provincial and federal jurisdictions. 72% of the shoreline is protected, and we're jointly managing 100% of the territory from mountain to sea floor. But that left the oceans. From 2012 to 2016, the Haida Nation, together with Eco-Justice, other First Nations, and NGOs, successfully challenged the Enbridge pipeline proposal to transport bitumen along those lines through coastal territories and Haida waters. Now, the greatest part of my job is working with elders like that who shared knowledge about the oceans and knowledge about the herring. In 2015, we obtained an injunction to stop the commercial fishery of vulnerable herring stocks in our territory. It remains closed to today. The elders emphasized the cultural and ecological role of herring and the Guayhanas area. Now, the motivation of the Haida Nation's efforts has always been this. It's always been the children. They are our truest measure of sustainability. If they can engage deeply in cultural activities, then they will learn how to care for the land and sea, like these children are here. Now, to feed cultural revival from 2008 to 2009, I led work on a project to catalog all of the songs of my Haida Nation, going back to archival recordings, and they're contained in these box sets that are now in the communities and helping children learn our legacies. I sang my first Haida song in public when I was 13. Now children learn them when they're in their womb. Through this work, I've deeply explored the theme of transformation. This is my brother-in-law, Reg Davidson, who's dancing Eagle Spirit. An eagle spirit is someone who is half human and half eagle. And I learned that every state of transformation is important, even the state that we're in right now. It may not be where we're headed, but it is important. And I apply that to my music. I sing traditional music in the Haida language because it is endangered. There are less than 20 people in the world who speak the Haida language. I fused it with an album with classical arrangements for my second album, New Journeys, and with rock and jazz influences for my third album, Grizzly Bear Town. In 1996, I had planned to practice law for 10 years, but I learned that not only is law Law is not jealous. Law is actually a diva. So at about the same age that Tina Turner made a comeback, I began thinking about how I could bring to life the Haida Nation's laws and oral traditions, and I recommitted to law. From 2013 to 2017, I worked on a book and an exhibit of 43 images of performance art illustrating the ancient Haida Nation narratives. This is, of course, the image of Raven bringing light to the world that is so well known and famous in the northwest coast of this country. But because law is a diva, I examined Indigenous laws in these images and Aboriginal title and Crown title, as in this image. I questioned how the Crown got title to land and sea through the myth of discovery. I celebrate Indigenous laws and how they blanket the land and sea, as in this image. And this woman, Octopus Woman, symbolizes Indigenous readiness to litigate if Crown does not change their antiquated colonial laws and policies. This art reflects my practice of applying ancient knowledge to contemporary phenomena and challenges like this woman, oil slick women. It would be a supernatural event. It would devastate areas such as North Beach and Toe Hill in Haida Gwaii. Look at that. Finally, this month, my husband and I will release 2 new projects. One is a children's book called Magical Beings, and the second is an oracle deck. Really, I'm trying to find every avenue available to disseminate an Indigenous and Haida worldview and a cultural environmental ethic. Now, I'm going to end with this image and say our journey as humans is to find ways to live together and to live with the earth. Given this country's history, the climate of change needed for sustainability must include Indigenous peoples steering our canoe forward. Thank you. Hawa.